These small granite islands in the Nile at Aswan, only 0.5 square kilometer in size, support a luxuriant vegetation cover, including some of the only remnants of certain flora existing in the Nile Valley before cultivation started by man. The islands shelter a remarkable botanical diversity as well as many characteristic Nile fauna, particularly exotic birds. Saluga and Ghazal form part of one of the 6 Nile cataracts that were the main obstacles for boats sailing on the Nile in antiquity. During the Nile floods, the islands were submerged for several months every year. The acacia trees nearby were able to withstand this immersion. It's remarkable, considering these are desert-adapted trees. The 2 islands of Saluga and Ghazal are characterized by predominantly expanding kinds of bushes that survived after the establishment of the old Aswan Dam and later the High Dam. The huge greenery in the area comprises 94 kinds of various plants. The favorable natural conditions in the area provided wildlife chances for resident as well as migrant birds. About 60 kinds of these rare birds live there, but universal danger of their extinction is looming. The floristic diversity of the islands is surprising for such a small area. Although 5 species of acacia are the visually dominant elements, there are over 120 other native plant species to be found, including tamarisk, henna, and a variety of unusual trees. The islands are located on an important flyway. They are a stopover for migrating birds in spring and autumn, and in the summer, numerous breeding birds nest there. An unusual resident is a rainbow skink. It can be found basking in the sun during the day. The rangers have established a bird ringing station, and more than 135 species of birds have been recorded. Today, there is still substantial variation in the water level controlled by the High Dam, that the outline of the islands and their interconnections vary throughout the year. The 2 islands of Saluga and Ghazal in the river Nile are about 3 kilometers north of Aswan Dam, and the exceptionally beautiful natural landscape of the Nile at Aswan has long been one of the city's main attractions. Kalabsha is another Nubian temple which was part of the rescue operation for monuments threatened by the rising waters of Lake Nasser. The temple was transported to the present site courtesy of the German Federal Republic in a salvage operation sponsored by UNESCO in the 1960s. Its original position was 56 kilometers south of Aswan until it was dismantled and moved to the island now called New Kalabsha, just south of Aswan High Dam. It can be seen from the dam perfectly well. Kalabsha Temple, ancient Talmis, was built over an earlier New Kingdom site during the Roman period of Caesar Augustus. It was dedicated to the cult of Osiris, Isis, and Horus, who was called here Mandulis. This is perhaps the finest example of a freestanding temple in Nubia. A granite gateway was discovered when the temple was salvaged and relocated, it was given to Berlin Egyptish Museum. The rest of the temple was constructed from sandstone. The bay leads to a pylon which is built against the rules at a slight angle to the rest of the temple. The temple was built according to the Egyptian traditional style. It's composed of an open court, then Ptolemaic columns and screen walls that lead to the hypostyle hall, which is decorated with ritual scenes. Most of the scenes depict Gladnin, Khnum, and another gods of southern Egypt. The sanctuary area consists of 3 chambers, each leading to the one behind, with a pair of columns on each room. The Holy of the Holies was in the farthest room, which was later used as a Christian church. Augustus, the Roman emperor, is depicted on the walls giving offering to Mandulis. There is a passage surrounding the inner temple building, similar to other Ptolemaic temples. A new wooden dock has been constructed in front of the temple, making it possible for Lake Nasser cruise boats to visit the islands. Hopefully, New Kalabsha will soon become another of Aswan's most important tourist destinations. Kalabsha Temple is among the most important of the salvaged monuments on Lake Nasser. It was built during the period of Emperor Augustus between 30 BC and 14 AD. The constructions of the temple follow the prototype of the ancient Egyptian temples built in the New Kingdom and throughout the Greek-Roman periods. The pylon is excellently preserved, but have no relief decoration except for the 2 figures of deities in the doorway. And just like any facade, the sun stretches its wings to protect the temple. Each tower has a vertical groove for flags. The open court between the pylon and the vestibule was surrounded on 3 sides by colonnades, now represented by 4 columns, with elaborate floral capitals. king presents offerings to the main deities here, especially Mandulis, the falcon Nubian god, whose cult prospered in this southern part of Egypt. There are several graffitis inscribed during the Greek period in Greek language. Apart from that, the walls are almost barren from reliefs. An important text dates back to 249 AD, records an important order given by Ammonius, the governor of Elephantine, to forbid breeding pigs inside the temple's precincts. The other text records the triumph of the Nubian king Ciclo over the Belimis tribe in the 6th century AD. That's why the lioness goddess Sekhmet is worshipped here. There are inscriptions written in Demotic and Coptic and Greek, and a man riding a horse wearing the crown of god Mandulis and throwing a spear at his enemy, guarded by an angel above his head. It is supposed to be the image of Saint George fighting the dragon. In front of the sanctuary and inside it, god Habi, the Nile god, is all over the lower walls, presenting fertility and prosperity to Egypt. As a baby, places his thumb into his mouth and is crowned to be a main god in Egypt. Mandulis, whose origin may be somewhere in Africa, is represented here as an infant and a young man. He's one of the factors that make Kalabsha Temple a unique one and worth to be an important stop and a part of Aswan's touristic agenda. Kalabsha Temple Complex is among the most important of the salvage monuments on Lake Nasser. It includes the main temple of Kalabsha, Beit El Wali, Garf Hussein, and the kiosk of Kirtasi. To encourage visitors to tour the island, a path has been paved with slabs of Aswan granite, which connects the Kalabsha temple with the other monuments. To the south of the main Kalabsha temple, the Roman kiosk of Kirtasi was originally built 30 kilometers south of Aswan. It's only 8 meters square and very similar to Trajan kiosk in Philae temple, which is on the other side of the dam. Kirtasi is much ruined, preserving only 2 Hathoric columns and 4 papyrus columns support the roof lintels, with screen walls in between. The kiosk is tiny and no other decoration has survived. It was originally known as a symbolic birthplace of the gods. The blocks of Garf Hussein, which is one of the monuments transported to New Kalabsha in the 1960s, were never reconstructed and were left neglected and overgrown until they were rediscovered on the island during recent restoration work by the Egyptian archaeologists. It was found that the blocks were actually a dismantled rock-cut temple known as Per Betah, which means the house of God Betah, founded during the reign of Ramses II by Sitao, the governor of Nubia. The temple of Garf Hussein, which has now been reconstructed, is approached through a large colonnaded court and is dedicated to the cults of Ra-Hur Akhti and Amun-Ra. Inside the rock temple, 6 pillars support the ceiling of a large hall, each with engaged colossal statues of Ramesses II. At the rear, an antechamber leads to 3 small chapels, with the largest central sanctuary depicting Ramesses II before the gods. Ramesses has another nearby temple called Beit el-Wali. It completes the complex of New Kalabsha that will soon become another of Aswan's most important tourist destinations. For over 50 years, the island of Philae and its monuments lay half submerged in water. Situated between both Aswan Old Dam and the High Dam, the water level was constantly high until the UNESCO led a great rescue operation for the Nubian monuments in the 60s. The temples of Philae were totally dismantled and rebuilt on the similar nearby island of Angelica, which rises 6 meters higher than the original island of Bigay. Metal pylons and few blocks can still be seen rising from the water to the south of Angelica. The earliest of the surviving monuments of Philae is a kiosk of Nectanebo I of the 30th dynasty. Most of the other structures are Ptolemaic and Roman and were reused by the early Christians when the temple was finally closed by the Emperor Justinian in 550 AD. The temple was dedicated to Isis and was a center of the cult of that great goddess and her other image Hathor during the Roman period. It was the last temple in use in Egypt. When it comes to legends, no other temple in Egypt surpasses Philae, for there are legends in every corner and building in the temple. But the most famous one tells the story of how Isis found the heart of Osiris here after his brother Set murdered him. Beginning at the south of the island, Nectanebo's structure is a hall with green walls linked by graceful columns. There are 2 colonnades on the east and west sides of the courtyard, leading to the first pylon. Each column has a different floral capital. The first pylon was built by Ptolemy XII and decorated in traditional Egyptian style, with the king subduing his enemies and worshipping goddess Isis and presenting offerings to the triad of the temple. The doorway was built by Nectanebo, and there he lies, represented in the form of two lions or sphinxes leading to the second pylon. Each evening, there's a sound and light show which recounts the legends against the magnificent backdrop of the everlasting monuments of Philae.